Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Conway. Welcome to Brave New North. We're going to give some time for folks to tune in. We got a really good show coming up tonight. Just give it some time. We're going to tweet out some news that it's happening. All right. I think we've got some people listening in. Hello, everybody. It's Saturday night, and that means Brave New North is riding once again. Sean Conway here. We've got a great show lined up, a bit of an old school throwback to Brave New North shows of old, where we look at the news and things that have happened in the last week or over the last couple of weeks. A couple of interesting things for sure. If there's anything that you think that we should sort of do a reaction to or try to break down for anyone, we've got a lot of experts in the room tonight, and we're going to try to do that work as well. We've got some great guests. Before we get to them, if you could please give us a like, give us a subscribe, and share the channel out to the folks you know. It really helps us in what we're doing and get the message out. We got to create that left media ecosystem that we've been talking about here for a while, and a lot of people have been talking about, and that's exactly why we have great guests coming on tonight. We've got Sandee from Left of the Box. We've got Bothered Boy from What's Bothering Me Today, and hopefully Andy Borkowski from Left Turn Canada. There was a bit of a miscommunication with Andy. He thought the show was at 8 a.m. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually we're at 8:30. Yes, last time for another reason. So we're going to hopefully have Andy on in a little bit, but we've got some fantastic guests lined up. Shout out to everyone in the chat. We've got Sandee's producer. We've got Conman 2012. Thanks everyone for coming in. Remember, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a share. It is Saturday night. Let's get the show started. First guest, we've got a fantastic progressive YouTuber, video producer, Sandee from Left of the Box on YouTube. Fantastic channel. And we also have Bothered Boy from What's Bothering Me Today. We're going to pull them into the stream. Hello.
Oh, hi everybody.
I was debating starting the show with hey everybody, here's what's but I didn't.
If you finish that sentence, you're what's going to bother me tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
It's I want to give a shout out to the new studio setup for Bothered Boy. Just completed a grueling move.
I have one.
Yeah, nothing like moving during a pandemic.
Yeah, I have one coming up in my near future. So,
my sympathies, comrade.
It's ridiculous. Like,
it's almost like we're lacking affordable housing in this nation of ours.
Well, I think we could, you could probably argue it.
I don't know. People on disability, we just gotta stretch out those dollars. $1,169 a month. That's great for a rent that's $1,500 a month.
Yeah,
just ridiculous. You got to raise the rates big time. Well, and this is a good place. Maybe we'll just start off here. This is a good place to start. We're gonna get right into it. So the federal government decided that not everybody, but that many people in Canada deserve $2,000 a month to live on, and then they stopped doing that, and the people that really needed it couldn't actually access it, and provincial governments, federal governments refused to legislate living wages for people on OW and ODSP and other support systems. And it's just a horrible, stupid system.
It's especially damning when, as you point out, people got, like, not everyone, but a lot of people got $2,000 a month and thought, wow, this has really helped make ends meet. And then lots of disabled Canadians came forward saying, oh, yeah, well, guess what? We have to live on less than that, several $100s less than that.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. And I kind of wish it had gotten more traction than what it did, but it definitely gave at least some people pause and realize that, you know what? Maybe we should reform the system. But instead, we had the wage subsidy where corporations like Rogers and Bell exploited that and issued stock buybacks rather than actually keeping on more workers, which was the explicit stated purpose of that program. So in other words, everything's just been bungled.
Yeah, one of my biggest frustrations with that was the excuse was given that we're used to living off of that much and not much has changed for us. So we're fine. And meanwhile, we're like, we're not fine. We haven't been fine. We haven't been living off of this. Many people are forced to get a job when really they shouldn't be, because if you're on disability, there's a reason. And so they try to find jobs under the table, which all would have been wiped out during quarantine. People are sacrificing different medications because depending on which disability you're on, not all your medications are going to be covered. Or if you need extra things like a wheelchair or, orthopedics or anything of that sort, that's not covered. And so you're constantly having to sacrifice. Our diets are crap because we can't afford anything. And they're like, well, you're doing just fine. And it's like, no. Many people are suffering and dying every year on disability because we don't get enough to just make do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty sad and disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an infuriating situation. And it's something like working in politics, like how many years have, political parties been campaigning on raise the rates? Like 25 years in Ontario. Longer.
Well, the Liberals said that they'll do a 3-year study into it.
Wow.
I know. 3-year study to see if we're suffering.
Yeah, that's totally fine. It's not like, there's plenty of evidence already, but okay.
I can save them 2 years, 364 days on that if they just, talk.
Yeah.
Or at least, and here's one of the things too, that's a hallmark of, liberalism. They actually don't talk to the people that are actually trying to administer their programs. So they're not talking to frontline OW and administrators or disabilities support workers or anything like that. They're talking to upper management and the senior political class, or the managers and deputy ministers, and that's who they think should shape policy, where really it should be the frontline workers who are determining the policy, because they're, for the most parts, they know what their clients need to support them in a time of need, which is what those programs are.
But frontline workers didn't donate $500,000 to my election campaign.
They should pay us more so we can donate more.
See, now you're thinking in 21st century terms. I like that.
If they pay me $500,000, I will donate $50, not 50,000, just 50.
Okay.
Just want to make that clear.
As someone in the comments is pointing out, in some cases, people are being forced into sex work because it's the only industry with sufficient pay and flexible hours, which, yeah, that's something that I've heard from several people is, and there was actually this really great Twitter thread I read, I think either last week or earlier this week, about this woman who had just suffered several jobs in the service industry and just rude customers, sexual abuse and harassment from customers and from her own fellow staff or management even. And she was very nervous about getting into sex work. And then she actually got into it and oh, look at that. She can set her hours. It's on her own terms. She can control who she's not in contact with. She found it very liberating, and it pays her better than what she did. And so now we have all these restaurants wondering, people just don't want to work because they got so much money on unemployment or whatever. And it's like, no, you made a terrible workplace. Like, that's on you.
Yeah. There are potentially minimum wage jobs that I could do, but mental health wise, not good for me, not good for my coworkers, not good for any customers I might be coming into contact with. And I'd be like, why am I putting myself through this just to not even still make enough to really get by? Because minimum wage isn't even enough to get by. Mm-hmm. So why would I put myself through all that hell just to be almost in the same position I'm currently in?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So I'd much rather, try this whole YouTube thing and see, like, I'm making like $27 a month now, which I need to start reporting as soon as I start taking it out. But living it rich here.
Yeah, hell yeah, dollar bills, y'all.
Wow, like I'm in the hole from this show. It's the beauty of it, I can't wait to be regulated by Bill C-10. But,
yeah,
we'll get into that later. I think
too many things to cover. We should what next?
When I first got into this, I was like, oh, is there even going to be enough news for me to cover? And then I'm like, I don't have enough time to cover everything. Like, it's just, Canadian news is not that boring. I wish it was, but there's just so much every day that I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around it.
Well, now you know why my Sunday Sum Up exists.
The Sunday Sum Up is a great show, and I really enjoy watching it.
Thank you.
It's great. I try to watch it every week when you put it up. You've been doing it 4 or 5 weeks now?
Something like that, just because, obviously because of moving, and I just had the scheduled one, so it's been on hiatus for the past 2 weeks. So then when I came back, I was like, I'm bothered by how much news I missed in the past 2 weeks. So yeah, as Sandee rightly points out, there's never a shortage. Although it's always weird to hear people say that they enjoy my stuff, and hearing, oh yeah, I always try and catch the Sunday Sum Up. You want to wake up on a nice, relaxing Sunday and proceed to become pissed off at the world? Like, I don't even fully understand that, even as like my own concept of just, what am I doing here? This is a cathartic release for me. Like, other people are saying, this is what I want to sit down and watch and feel worse about things over the next 15 minutes. Like, cool. Thank you. Cause I love the support, but I also just think, man, what am I doing here? Like, this is just depressing.
That's part of the problem. People are waking up in a good mood and they feel guilty. So it's like, why not find something that's just going to put me in a bad mood? And then I don't have to have this, this guilt that I'm not feeling bad, because now I feel bad. How dare I feel like I'm in a good mood?
Yeah, come on. Something must be terribly wrong to be in a good mood. Although actually, while work this week was very, very busy, I put in several hours of overtime. But it was also good in that, making paychecks and still getting videos out again, even though the place, like this corner's clean, but elsewhere there's just boxes and disassembled shelves. It's not great here. I'm not going to lie, but at least I have this. So, perspective, appreciate the little things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny, you mentioned sort of the routine and like getting up in the morning, and it reflects on me because I'm a huge fan of Rising with Crystal and Sagar on Hill TV, and that's my morning news show, guilty pleasure / the only American news I really dive into. And unfortunately, they're leaving the show. They're leaving the Hill and doing something else, which is like, I'll still follow it on there. I like it. But that's my morning routine is now all shot, and I no longer can watch Rising in the morning. But it's kind of like I get up and watch Rising and like make coffee and like prepare for like all of the Zoom meetings that I do in my life, and then go into like watching other things and watching Bothered Boy and watching Left of the
Thank
Box
you.
and all kinds of stuff.
And then in your downtime, you then do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Sean's a busy man. But actually, there's an opportunity there in that story that you just mentioned about Zoom and everything to segue into yet another Canadian story. That Liberal MP who got busted again.
I'm gonna pull up the clip.
Like, what?
No, yeah, this is so good.
Okay, it's good, but it's like terrible as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's Will Amos once again in the news. It's a very, very exciting time. He urinated. Did anyone see the video?
They
I
have the
haven't
video
seen
of
the
this?
video because I don't like the idea of watching a MP urinate, but
There's no
whatever.
way they
Let's
should have
see
released
this
that.
then.
I'm just
Yeah,
assuming there was video.
I heard that it was caught on video, but it was closed to the public this time.
Gotcha.
Look, we've already seen him naked once in the news. We don't need it a second time. We already
he
know
wasn't
what's
like
there.
he wasn't naked, was he? He was just in his boxers or jogging shorts or something.
No, didn't he
the
like
first
pee
one?
in a
No, he
cup
was
or
naked.
something?
I don't know.
The first clip, he was completely naked. There was a phone strategically placed somehow.
Like in an anime.
Like, why are you holding your phone down there like that?
Oh, this is gold. Okay. So here's the statement, and I'll read it out because this is really Sandee and I were talking about before the show started. Here, let me just read it. Last night, while attending House of Commons proceedings virtually in a non-public setting, I urinated without realizing I was on camera. I am deeply embarrassed by my actions and the distress they may have caused anybody who witnessed them. While accidental and not visible to the public, this was completely unacceptable, and I apologize unreservedly. I will be stepping aside temporarily from my role as parliamentary secretary and from my committee duties so that I can seek assistance. I will continue to represent my constituents, and I'm grateful to be their voice in Parliament. I'm deeply appreciative of the support of my staff and the love of my family. What does it mean?
Yeah, he needs help learning how to use the shutter on his camera. Is that the assistance he needs, or does he need assistance somewhere else? Because if you need assistance for something else when it comes to that sort of thing, then one might imply it wasn't so accidental.
So, generally speaking, in that context, when someone needs assistance, it's usually for a substance abuse problem. So either he's like had a problem being really high, and so he's not fully aware of what's going on around him, or like you said, it's like a weird sex thing. Maybe it's like this, like I recognize this wrong, but I just can't help myself. I need therapy or something. But generally speaking, in my experience, when people have said they're stepping away to seek assistance, it's usually with some kind of substance abuse issue.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's just like hearsay and allegations. So
if
any liberals are listening, please don't sue me. So,
well, here's my take on it. Like, number one, I don't care that he peed on camera. Number two, I don't care that he was naked on camera or getting changed. Like, I do not care about those things. The thing that bothers me is that it's being, and I hate to do this. I think I'm defending the guy. Like, why do we have to have this member of parliament have to seek assistance for something, which I don't think is a huge problem?
Well, we don't know if it's necessarily this problem or for something else that's causing him to do these things. So perhaps we'll find out in the next few days. But for now, they're just taking time off, which, I mean, maybe they've just been too overworked and stressed. And that's why they're like, I can't focus on things. Who knows? We won't know until more details come out.
Well, that's one of the things about this story is the knee-jerk reaction that we all want to have versus what actually is happening. Because the first release of the image, some people it's like, that's funny, that's this, that's that. Okay, somebody took a screenshot of that without his knowledge and published it. That
was the problem.
that is, you are exposing somebody else's naked body without their consent.
Like, yes, valid point. At the same time, if this was like we saw with the previous instance of being in a parliamentary session with other MPs and colleagues,
Yeah.
or as part of a committee, like on Zoom, we've had a year to get used to Zoom. That's why, I didn't suddenly sit down here in my boxes or anything. Like, I am clearly wearing pants like an adult. So it just strikes me as one of those things where by now people should have figured out how most of this works and what isn't acceptable, which is why there's probably something else going on. But what that is, we won't know until this person comes forward with that information, should they choose to do so.
Okay, and I just hate to say it, but I am dying of curiosity. Where the hell is his camera that it caught him urinating? Like, do you really have that aimed towards the toilet? Like
that, or one thing that I know that has happened is people have been bringing their laptops or their phones on their Zoom meetings with them to the bathroom. This has happened a few times.
Why would you
not
do
not
that?
to me,
That's
because
just
people aren't used to it, and it's like, oh, I can work from home, so I can do multiple things. So let me, make a drink or a coffee, or let me, do some dishes while the Zoom meeting's going on. Let me go to the bathroom. There was unfortunately a rather infamous one of a woman who brought her laptop with her into the bathroom, like back when the pandemic was first starting. And it unfortunately made the news about how, she puts the laptop on the floor, drops her in front of the toilet, and after a few seconds realizes, and then like slams the thing shut, but all her coworkers have already seen what's happening. And so them trying to diplomatically say, no, you know what? I saw nothing. I saw nothing. I choose to see nothing. So yeah, but that was early on in the pandemic. Now it's been like a year. So,
I could see it for making coffee, going to the kitchen, but I also don't see why it's a problem to say, hey, I'm putting myself on mute because I'm just going to be right back. But to take it to the washroom with you, there is no good outcome there. There is so many things that can go wrong.
But what if they say something important during the Zoom meeting and then you can't leave? I guess that's part of the logic behind it, but it's still very
unfortunate. Volume loud enough that I can still hear what's going on.
It's all just.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard the last of this story. There's some good points coming in from the chat. If someone took a pic of a naked female MP, this would be a completely different story. Don't like the double standard. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said there.
That's a fair point.
Let's see here.
If you need more news stories, I got plenty.
Well, we got some. The next one I want to go into is about something we like to talk about here, which is an exciting thing. Well, I wouldn't say it's exciting. Oh, what did I press? This is
press the button to end the world.
Yeah, yeah. Is he urinating a bottle like an Amazon worker? I don't know.
You need to pay yourself better.
Oh man, I wish I could pay myself Jeff Bezos bucks and just fund all the art projects I want to fund, and just actually embarrass liberals and end boil water advisories on reserves. Like, no, I will pay for this and the infrastructure. You also want a community center? Done.
Yeah.
So this is a story that I saw come in overnight and followed up on it this afternoon. So the Justice Minister accidentally deletes tweet that one of his campaign donors will get to become a judge. And so David Lametti, of course, is our federal Justice Minister after Jody Wilson-Raybould. They were announcing a bunch of new judges, and basically they added an extra name of this guy, a Montreal lawyer named Daniel Urbas, to Quebec's Superior Court. And so there was this flurry of tweets that went out congratulating all these new Superior Court justices. But Daniel Urbas was actually not yet approved. He hadn't done the judicial appointment process yet. And so then it comes out that he's a big time donor for David Lametti in both his nomination campaign and in his general election campaign, like big bucks, like $1,000 here, $1,200 here. And this isn't the first time that this has happened with the justice minister appointing lawyers to the Quebec Superior Court or to other court systems, as this other guy, Philippe Belanger, in 2014, 2015, contributed $1,400 to a nomination campaign and another $1,500 to the general campaign. And it's just like, again, it's liberals being corrupt and really liking all of their buddies. And it's just something that I think that the left parties in Canada need to start attacking a lot more, is the sort of blatant, in my opinion, corruption that occurs in the federal government, especially with the appointment of judges, justices, and other senior civil service positions.
Yeah, it's not surprising. It's not surprising, because even if you look provincially here, you have Charles McVety, who almost got his university approved for status, and the issues with Mike Harris and how he's totally decimated the long-term care home system by being one of the shareholders and everything he's done. And yet the amount of money given to him, and then Doug Ford giving him the Order of Ontario. You have Doug Ford on camera during his campaign doing backroom deals with people about the Greenbelt. This isn't shocking. And it's not just conservatives, it's also the liberals. I don't think anyone who's paying attention knows this. And people need to stop making excuses for all the scandals that they're seeing coming out of that party, because they're afraid that if we don't support them, we're going to get the conservatives. We have other options here.
Gee, it's almost like the political parties, especially the two main ones that seem to form governments, it's almost like they're just two sides of the same coin. That is the ruling class, and they feel entitled to do whatever they want because they can get away with it. And it's just so endemic in party politics since even before Canada was a goddamn thing. And we all kind of have to sit here and take it unless we decide to become revolutionary in terms of how we vote for parties and organize ourselves and apply direct action or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at, and we have the same sort of problems with appointments and insiders getting favorable treatment during the Stephen Harper years. One of the biggest things that happened there were the big shakeups in the at CBC, and the CBC board of directors and all of their senior staff are all Harperites. And they're all hardcore conservatives, and they all believe in dismantling of the national broadcaster. I also kind of believe that. I don't really believe in a national broadcaster for the way that the CBC is now. Maybe I'm just not sold on it yet. And people have been trying to sell me on it for a long time, but I kind of like an independent media, and I think for good reasons. And I think there's a lot of room for debate there. I don't think today's the time to debate whether or not we need state media, but
happy to take that debate up another time.
Another time for sure.
Yeah, but we kind of already have a lot of that in place. So,
and I think the thing is these appointments and the way that it works, that yes, there is internal processes that do remove some of the partisanship associated with the process of appointments. Like that does exist through the civil service. But as soon as you get into, I think, Mark Joyce is making a great point here. Too many insiders are not just in the party, but the professional managerial class in different fields that all donate and pat each other's backs in the liberal and conservative parties. Yeah, I think it's like this whole class analysis to political appointments, or not just political appointments, any sort of appointment within the federal government and the civil service. The PM appointing the head of CBC is yes, it is 100%. So I can agree with that.
I mean,
I
can argue that the PM appointing anyone, including even, the governor general, that's a conflict of interest. Like there's a lot of conflicts of interest in our system. It's not really a great system.
No, and like Canada is at best like a second-class democracy.
Yep.
And there's not really a lot of democratic institutions in Canada. I
would actually like to point out to people that it's no coincidence that the various rebellions that have happened in Canadian history are rendered footnotes rather than actually exploring what caused those rebellions, which in all cases was governments not listening to the people and just becoming increasingly egregious, ultimately forcing the hand of the citizens to turn to violence. That's a part of our heritage. From the rebellions of 1837 and 1838 to the Red River Rebellion, the Northwestern Rebellion. If you want to call the Winnipeg General Strike a rebellion of sorts, there's that too. So this is a part of Canadian history that often just gets kind of put under the rug as like, yeah, that's a footnote. Yeah, this thing happened. Are we going to explore why? Nah, you don't need to know that. Let's just get to Confederation.
Yeah. The amount of things that because as an adult, usually it's when you start doing your own learning is when you actually start learning the full true history of Canada. Because you're not taught any of this in school the way that you should be, or they are just footnotes, or it was mentioned in a class in elementary school once. And when you're an adult and you hear a story and you see people's reaction, you're wondering, why are they reacting that way? And you start digging into why they're reacting that way. You're like, oh, wow. This country is not what I thought it was.
Hey, did y'all know that Canada for a while suffered like a decade plus of Protestant terrorism in Upper Canada? And one of our fathers of responsible government was routinely targeted because, he's not supporting Protestant supremacy and he's cozying up with a French Catholic. He needs to die. Welcome to pre-Confederation Canadian history. It's honestly a fucking nightmare.
I used to think Canada was so boring in school. Like when I was in high school and stuff, like Canada is just so boring. There's nothing interesting about this country.
They choose to teach it that way.
You just start getting into it and it's like, there's some stuff going on here that maybe we should know about.
Yeah, like the 200-year history of slavery and how the average slave tended to be indigenous and their average lifespan was 16 years old because they were brought from slave raids. And because they had no resistance to European diseases, they were dying pretty quickly in the settlements. Part of our heritage.
Well, that's the thing. They always talk about the Underground Railroad and why they escaped up here was because there were no slaves in Canada. They just removed the word anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things, when you start to look into it. Like I always like the the story of the Toronto communists and trade unionists that were trying to have a rally and trying to organize at one point, I believe during the 1930s. And I forget who was chief of police at the time. If chat wants to chime in, I believe his name was Bloor, and if his name wasn't Bloor, I'm pretty sure it was Dundas. So there was a big rally happening down, I believe, Queen's Park or down at one of the other parks. Anyway, so a bunch of mounted Toronto cops went in and beat the shit out of a bunch of labor activists and communists and socialists. And this was this is a very regular thing in Canada. It's always been a violent repression of people on the left. And Yeah. RCMP should be abolished. Yeah, sure. Why not?
I've said they should be abolished, especially ever since the whole terrible Mi'kmaq affair over on the East Coast, where you should just listen to these white people and just give up your catch. It's like, you're supposed to enforce the police. Why are you not arresting people literally burning down my shit? Like, you're right there. You can see them. Like,
there's two things I'll bring up with when it comes to like community protection, defense, and all that sort of thing, like protection of the peace. Two things. One is the Ontario NDP has a pretty decent police reform plan, which I think is pretty good from a mainstream political party. There's a number of things. The other thing I would look at is the Anishinaabe Police Service and the Treaty 3 Anishinaabe Aski Nation police services up in the north.
Yep.
There are great tenets for community involvement, protection, defense, like de-escalation, nonviolence, like engaging in community, and still having the things that communities do want, which like First Nations communities do need assistance from keepers of the peace, right? So there are different ways that you can even further decolonize these pieces. Yes, I think the provinces should take over to a sense, but I think that the First Nations model of policing is something that the rest of Canada needs to look at, because
absolutely,
it's not rooted in a violent repression of people and like staunch defense of property so much as it is about, well, as a community, we realize that mental health, poverty, addictions, social determinants of health are contributing causes to quote unquote petty crime and things like that, crimes of desperation and things like that. So you need to address the root causes. So you do that. And if you're doing that work and you connect people with the resources they need to improve their material conditions, there's no longer a need for heavily armed police to do anything. What they're there is to stop violent crime and to actually try and help people. So should be able to Google them. There are two services I can think of in Ontario: the Anishinaabe Police Service and the NAN Police. Yeah, thanks, Father Boy.
You're welcome, because this is something I've actually talked about. There's also a third, which I'm typing in now. Quanlin Dunn Community Safety Officers.
Yeah,
they're up in Whitehorse, and so far it's kind of just like a trial program, but it's already shown markedly improved results because and to give people some information, before Quanlin Dunn, which is a Indigenous reserve just outside of Whitehorse in Yukon, they constantly had problems with the RCMP not really responding in time and often just brutalizing them. They were kind of just as big a problem in the community as the problems they were supposed to be there to solve. Mm-hmm. And eventually they decided to introduce this new program, bringing in 4 good old local boys who would become community safety officers. So like they do everything from, help like skin or not skin, but like help dress deer and like trapper catches, help direct people to their homes when they're, okay, look, we see you're drunk. Okay, we're going to get you home safe and sound. Or, de-escalating fights, or, oh, there's a bear on the property. Okay, well, we'll try and chase it out, or we'll just go around and tell people, hey, don't go down the street. There's a bear, let it do its thing, and we'll tell you when it's safe. Markedly better results. And then, because there were still a detachment at the time, I think of 2, maybe 3 RCMP officers, the RCMP didn't get as many calls. So when they did get a call, they quickly understood, oh, this is probably a more serious affair, so we should go faster, as opposed to before. It's like, there's like someone loitering in the park, or there's a bear in my backyard. There's some pure like whatever. Whereas now it's like, hey, you need to get over here, or like we need to clear the way for paramedics, or like there's a serious altercation, you need to get over here. Like, oh, okay, well, we'll be there like much sooner than anticipated. So it's another instance of indigenous minded solutions that has resulted in a net gain for both sides. The police are responding more, and in turn, they're having a better relationship with the community. And then the community also has their own community safety officers helping just keep the peace, sort of take care of some stuff, warn people, casually make sure that they're not being too much of a harm or threat to themselves or to others. And they're not armed, right? Like, I think they do carry like bear spray and maybe handcuffs, but they're not like, sitting there with guns the way the RCMP are. And so far it's working. And as Sean pointed out with the Anishinaabeg police service, and then the Anishinaabe Aski police service, which again covers most of Northern Ontario, which for reference is, I think, like twice the size of Texas or something like that. Yeah. It's a massive area. And because of that, they know that they need to have good community relations to help police and kind of manage such a massive part of the country. So even just here in Canada, when people think, well, what does it mean to defund the police and how do we change this?
That's how.
Look to indigenous-led solutions because they're working.
And I think defund the police is a very doable thing when you talk about it that way. And you made a good point this way, and it brings me to something from my experience. So some folks may know I used to run a bar for about 10 years. I ran a bar in Peterborough, Ontario, and so we took care of kind of stuff that happens in a bar, brawls or, scraps and spats and, a bit of theft here and there, and, the things that happen. And we took care of that, without relying on police, like oftentimes it's, when you're working in the service industry, just call the police, they'll deal with it. But we had a good system sorted out, a good community built around the establishment. So, and we were all sort of trained in like de-escalation. Like we were trained really well. We had a good relationship with the community, but every now and again there's a situation like, yeah, we gotta call the cops, and cops would be at our place in 5 seconds because they knew that if they got a call from us,
things were serious.
Something's going down. Like as opposed to like say the nightclubs where they're just parked there all night, which is, shout out to a good book, United States of Amnesia by Gore Vidal.
Ooh,
very good book.
Sounds good.
Another, for people that are interested in Gore Vidal, I think it might still be on Netflix, is a documentary called Best of Enemies, which is about the debates with Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley, I think from the late 60s, early 70s, around the DNC and RNC convention. Very, very, very good documentary for fans of Gore Vidal's patrician wit. Defund the police becomes really, really easy when you actually just do the stuff that police shouldn't be doing. Right? It just makes sense, right? You give communities back control of their they need autonomy. Communities need autonomy and determination the same way a First Nation does, but small cities, large cities, it doesn't matter. So look at the OPP. They should be disbanded. You don't need a provincial police force. Every community should be allocated their own funds to do their own thing as they see fit, and that be determined by the community, and community is accountable to it.
The only times I could see the need for like a provincial or like a greater statewide, as in like a national police system, is to help direct coordination efforts for things like manhunt, drug busts, investigations across the country to help root out a network of drug smugglers, gun smugglers, pedophiles, like that kind of whole collaboration, if you want to call it that, and working together to address big systemic problems like that, I think is good. At the same time, you could probably do that if you just improved communication between local police forces, right? So even then, it's like just a tenuous justification at best that still doesn't really hold up to scrutiny if you actually give communities their own autonomy, which then they're going to be protective of their community. So no, we don't want this. Well, who knows who brought it in? Oh, I know this guy. He's usually up to no trouble. Hey, so-and-so, what'd you do? Oh, okay, whatever. Like, I talked to this guy. I didn't know he was doing that though. Oh, sorry about that. Like,
yeah,
who knows? But generally speaking, it would be, or at least one would hope, it would be a more accountable system. And unfortunately, on the subject of the news and like we're talking about First Nations and everything, this kind of makes me want to segue because I just got a really telling comment on today's video just now, which was about the 215 children found in a mass grave in Kamloops, BC. And this person just said WTF and then like the open face, like shocked face emoji. So this is something that a lot of people don't seem to know about either internationally or even here in Canada. And we sort of touched on this earlier when talking about Indigenous people and like Canada's history of imperialism and the rebellions and all that. This stuff unfortunately continues. And there's a really poignant point that someone on Twitter pointed out earlier, which is that in the wake of the Humboldt Broncos, 19 dead teenagers, and the nation paused, came together collectively to mourn. And this person is not seeing the same kind of pause and reverence for this story, which is very telling.
Yeah, I was trying to look up more sources, more information on this, and the lack of attention this is getting is heartbreaking. Like how you can't, and it's just one school, one mass grave that they know of.
Yeah, like how many more are out there, right?
How many more are at that school even? It's
because like as some people have tried to quote unquote do the gotcha of, oh well, you see governments had already talked about this in the past of finding accountability, so they've done the whole accountability thing. I think what people are forgetting is that this was a grave of undocumented deaths. Yeah. We have lists of documented deaths in residential schools because that's, apparently we didn't have enough nightmare fuel in our own history. We needed to have a list of documented deaths and undocumented deaths. So that's the really terrifying part, is this is one school with 215 undocumented deaths, some of them as young as 3 years old. And I'll remind people, for those who may be tuning in that aren't aware, the last residential school closed in 1996. This is not ancient history.
Well, it's still going on because you look at the foster care
I need
system.
My beer now. This is...
Yeah. It's still going on because if you look at the foster care system, more than half the children are Indigenous. And their death rate in foster care is astronomical. Like, if this was happening to the white kids in foster care, you would redo the foster care system. You would have a hard look at it. But the amount of deaths that are happening currently, how can they just say nothing?
Yeah. Oh, well, the reason why they can say nothing is because Canada is a deeply racist settler colonial history founded upon the imperialism of the British Empire. So there's that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the fact that, again, I'm really glad you brought up the foster care point, because what happens is they'll take children away from Native women and say, look, you don't have the funds, the resources, or anything to take care of this child, so we're going to put them in foster care. And then the people in foster care, oh, you clearly need help and support raising all these children and feeding all these mouths. So here's money and support and an attachment worker. And it's like, so where's that for the Native women to help give them and their families a fighting chance? And that's not even touching on BC's controversial birth alert system, or on the fact that from like Winnipeg to BC and all areas in between, there have been documented instances, including as recently as just like I think last year or the year before, of Native women having their children ripped out of their arms to be sent into foster care, or worse, their newborn children are being held hostage if the women don't sign a form consenting to sterilization. So genocide continues in a myriad of ways in Canada to this day. It didn't end with the 60s scoop. It didn't end with the closure of the last residential school in 96. It continues to this day, where, you know, we're not supporting communities. We are systematically trying to the other news story recently was about a social worker reporting that some Indigenous girls as young as 10 were having IUDs inserted into them, and on top of that they weren't getting proper follow-up care, which if you get an IUD you need follow-up care. It is so atrocious, and it's happening today, and it just seems like it's not sticking with people's mentality, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think most of it, you know, comes down to Canada's sort of reverence for acknowledging things are bad, but not doing anything about it. And case in point, the last residential school closed in 1996. Yeah, most of the ones in Ontario were more or less closed around, you know, the 70s and the 80s, but they also had the Indian day school programs, which existed on reserve and off territory, where they were segregated schools where children had to go to. There's a huge class action lawsuit that was just settled there, dealing with those children. There's the effects of the 60s scoop, the fact that people have no idea who their families are, right? And they just happen to be a bit tan, right? And that was always the thing. And I know folks that grew up and they had like the Indian sister, you know, who was, you know, a 60s scoop child, and they grew up and they didn't know anything about where they came from. The foster system is still a continuation of residential schools, of the day schools, forced sterilizations, all of these sorts of things. Even the way that the reserve system is set up, with the ability for people to build a house, to take on credit card debt. You know, these are things that don't often. Can you buy a car? Are you allowed to sell a piece of wood? You know, there are so many things that are tied into the Indian Act, and as well as through the Canadian Constitution recognizing Section 35 rights. There's so much out there that just continues to happen, and it's strictly and solely on the federal government. It is only them. There's no, they could change everything. They have a minority government right now, right? Justin Trudeau's been the fucking prime minister for 7 years now. He had a majority government for 4.5 years. You know, they could have done something then. They could have done something. Stephen Harper could have done something. There was the biggest protest movement in a generation happened during Stephen Harper's reign here in Canada, and public pressure obviously doesn't work for the Canadian government. So really, I think there's a couple of things that can be done. I think a popular movement to like tax the churches, of reparations.
I heard a kitty somewhere.
Yes.
Of land back. You know, there's so many things that can happen. And land back doesn't even mean anything. Like, it's like, oh, give Crown land back. Sure. Yeah, easy. Like, why does the federal government need to administer that? Take that funding, give it back to First Nations, and let them administer lands. Yeah.
Also, it would help if you know, I've pointed out before in at least one video, if not two at this point, how in many ways First Nations communities are actually subsidizing the Canadian economy. Giddy! Because their lands are just being openly abused for logging, mining, offshore drilling, putting, you know, gas and pipeline infrastructure through it. But the natives are not being adequately compensated the way, say, us in quote unquote settler, you know, proper cities and civilization, as some would like to call it. We get to have all these things like zoning amendments and, oh no, like if you're paying for this, you need to compensate us fairly and reinvest in the community. That doesn't have to happen on reserves because, oh, whatever, it's so expensive to set this up in Baker Lake or whatever. And that is so stupid because they will spend millions, if not billions, to get the infrastructure up there to extract the wealth from the land, but they won't take care of the community that's right next door.
Yep.
And instead what they'll do is they'll make sure that the cops, namely RCMP, show up to give them a hard time if they dare try and stand up for their land and their rights. Like hell, and what was the Oka crisis in Kanasatake in just south of Montreal? It was over a golf course. The Haudenosaunee said, "Hey, you know what? No, you're not."
It was an expansion of an existing golf. There was already a golf course there.
Yeah, right. So it's like, an expansion of an existing golf course. And they said, no, hold up. This is literally like sacred burial ground. We've been here for far longer than you assholes ever have been. How did we respond? We sent in the military. Like, oh my God. Also, if people want some great reading on some of the terrors of how we've treated Indigenous people, but also support Indigenous artwork and writers, great book is 150 Years Retold, graphic novel. I got it as a Christmas gift. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
I'm very interested in that.
Yep, do it. Support Native artists and writers.
But, to be fair to Justin Trudeau, he has been doing stuff, spending millions of our dollars to fight their claims in court. He sent out a very touching tweet yesterday saying he's thinking of people with the deaths of 215 children. He's thinking about them right now. That's a lot for him.
On his Gord Downie jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yeah,
like
it takes a lot for him to think.
I'll never forget early on, I don't know if he was prime minister yet or he was still like in election mode or something, but I remember for a while there were several protests that were happening in Ottawa. One was a local Indigenous Anishinaabe leader who was staging a hunger strike in front of the new Indigenous Peoples Pavilion across from Parliament Hill. But also on Parliament Hill for a while there at some point, other Indigenous folks, I think they were Cree or something, had set up a teepee as a kind of protocol, like, look, this is Indigenous land. And at one point, Justin Trudeau showed up there, and like he's holding the eagle feather and he's quote unquote listening to the kids, like, oh, I hear you. But as the kids are rightfully pointing out, it's like, so what does that actually mean? And what are you going to do? And he just gives the typical political answer. I'm like, this is what we can expect if this man becomes prime minister, like as his prime ministership. I forget again if this happened when he was prime minister or just before. Oh, you were there. Yes. Yeah, okay. Please tell us that in firsthand account.
Teresa Spence on Victoria Island. I was up there around that time for one of the big demonstrations for Idle No More on Parliament Hill. And Justin Trudeau went and like sat with Teresa Spence, who was on hunger strike through Idle No More about the Ottawapiskat water crisis. She was the chief at the time. And Justin Trudeau went and he was wearing his jean jacket and like, doing his thing. And it's the jean jacket he always wears whenever he's doing Native stuff. And this is like Justin Trudeau's, like, I can always tell
it's his regalia.
It's going to be a horrible day for Indigenous people in Canada when Justin Trudeau puts on the jean jacket, because everything is going to be just bullshit.
I know what I need for Halloween now.
It's so funny. It's so funny. And he always does this, right? Like he did it before, when Gord Downie like called him out, and Gord Downie like died like 3 months later, right? They're like on stage, the final Who show, and he's like yelling at Justin Trudeau, who's in the audience, to do better for Indigenous people. And Justin Trudeau again like tweets out something like, "Thank you, Gord. We all need to be listening." Like some bullshit like this. And it's
that
just
was so perfect.
Like,
he means it. He got a tattoo.
Yeah, he got a
tattoo.
Got to hide a tattoo.
That's commitment.
Yeah. Does that mean all those gym rats with the tribal tattoos are really passionate about Maori rights?
Well, then here's the other thing too. Like he has that tattoo, and before he was prime minister, he beat the shit out of one of the only Indigenous senators.
Oh, right.
Boxing match.
What's it?
Patrick Brazo.
Brazo, yes. Oh, I forgot that was a thing, and I had to explain to people this is a thing that's happening in Canada right now. People said, "Wait, what? Canada's interesting now? What?"
Canada's always been interesting. Like we had a prime minister that spoke to ghosts. Like it was like
his dead dog.
Well, there's like this thing like Canada out of context. Like recently there was if I was trying to explain to someone in Australia, well, there's this really prominent liberal shill. It's a gray sock that smokes a cigar and has green hair.
Stevie.
Good old Ed the Sock.
That's Canada right now.
It literally is
people
Canada.
taking this seriously.
It's so funny. And there's another, Neil with Zod guy. He's the same. They like do the Ed the Sock TV show or podcast or whatever it is. And if Andy Borkowski was here, and like no pressure, Andy, I know we got our dates messed up, but Andy Borkowski was talking about Ed the Sock on the new episode of Left Turn Canada. But by the way, I binged all of your media this week, like Sandee's Bothered Boy and Left Turn Canada. And it's all great stuff. Like you're all doing fantastic work. Oh my God, really?
Here, we can make this, just give this guy a little orange jacket and we're good to go.
There you go.
Can you introduce this character?
This was my sock that I just took off.
Speaking of like news, and you said orange jacket, that reminded me of like orange NDP. We should very rightfully criticize the BC NDP government of John Horgan for allowing the continued exploitation of Indigenous land and like the whole LNG thing that they're still trying to hype up. And also the like completely thrown under the rug protests and mass arrests that have been happening at Fairy Creek, protesting the loss of like old growth that can be found anywhere on the Pacific coast. And they're logging it. And they're responding with police brutality.
I was disappointed with the BC NDP when they're like, oh yeah, the Site C Dam.
That too.
It's already, there's nothing we can do. It's already, pretty much started. It's going to start producing enough energy for us in 90 years or so when we don't need it anymore. And
I think that there's one thing to be like head of a resource-based economy and to try and like signal that you're not going to do those things. You need to be straight up and say like, hey, let's talk about the big log first. Because I think the big log is something, there's a lot of nuance in Fairy Creek and there's a lot going on there. Number one, for me, I am anti clear cutting and anti chopping down really big trees. Number one, I need to say that. Personally, that is my opinion. Number two, the big log was cut a few years ago and has been in, what do they call it, a saw pit or something like that. I think that they have new regulations protecting old growth there, and that tree was not protected. But the First Nation that has right to resource, and they're the rights holders of that area, want that project to happen. Do I agree with that? No. But I think that there is something to look at. You look at governance structures of British Columbia First Nations. You have both an elected Indian Act council and chief system. You also have a hereditary chief system, which is not enforceable by the Indian Act or through different self-determination agreements and things like that. They've come to an agreement, both sides of the aisle, which generally, like if we look at the Wet'suwet'en issue from last year, the hereditary council was against it, the elected council was for it, and you had conflict there.
I remember that, yeah.
It is fishy to me for both the hereditary and elected councils to be supporting the project. The provincial government has nothing to do with the project, really, other than their regulations around what can be cut. but even then they're overridden by the First Nations right to develop. So I think, number one, cutting down old growth, bad. Number two, why are we protesting First Nations right to self-determination and their rights over land? Because that is included in land back. Now, do I think that systems over the years and capitalism, imperialism has put First Nation communities into a situation where they have to say yes to big development? Probably. I think that's one of the pieces. But I think it's more than just thinking like this is bad. I think it's unfortunate. But that's like maybe I'm thinking too much about it. I've been talking to some friends.
No, I think it's good to have that nuance though, and that additional information. But I think that probably and this is just again an assumption on my part, but I think the main reason why people are protesting is because they're protesting over the cutting of the old growth itself, and not necessarily protesting that Indigenous people should have the right to do what they want with their land. It's about the old growth and preserving that natural history, if you want to call it such. That's the main angle I seem to have been seeing.
Yeah, I find it really funny that people will, let's say for an instance of the Wet'suwet'en conflict, they're going to cite the First Nation Hereditary Council said that they don't want this project happening, so we cannot let this project go forward. Where right now in Fairy Creek, the local First Nation, both the elected and hereditary council, are saying, hey, this is a project our community really wants. And so that's where I'm like, I don't know how to think about that. And there's not been a lot of communication from the First Nation or the Hereditary Council out bringing those sorts of things up, other than a statement they said, which was all the blockaders and protesters need to get off our land.
Well, then, they probably should get off their land then, if that's what the land and title owners are saying.
It's just I think it's I don't know.
Well, it's so hard to know what to feel about a lot of stories these days because we don't know all the facts that are going into. We can't trust regular media reporting because they will focus on one thing and leave out a whole bunch of stuff. But it's if these trees are being cut down with approval, okay, was it a financial need? And if so, could we not have met that need some way else?
Yeah, absolutely. Setting security by RCMP. Yeah, the RCMP is in there enforcing an injunction that was put forth by the First Nation, not by the company, not by the provincial government, not by the federal government. There are self-determination agreements through most of British Columbia, and those First Nations have access to legal powers that other First Nations across Canada do not have.
Right, because I think if you look at a map of treaties in Canada, BC is conspicuously absent.
Because they're mostly unceded land, so they're able to have proper self-determination agreements with provincial and federal governments or representatives of the Crown. And I think I pulled up an article. Let me see if this.
Well, in actuality, this explains a lot why they're actually the media's covering the actual protesters and talking to them this time.
Yeah, and here, let me pull up the official statement. Where is it?
Would it be on their website?
Okay. Here we go. I got it. I'm going to pull it up. If anyone has any information about this particular First Nation and anything that they think we need to know, please share it. So this is from last month. This has been going on for a while, by the way. Pachita, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Pachidot First Nation holds unceded Aboriginal title and rights in our territory, which is located on the southwest coast of Vancouver Island. We have a spiritual connection with our territory, and our culture is based on our relationship with our lands and resources. We have inherent governance rights and sacred responsibilities to manage the human use of resources in our territory. Pachidot is concerned about the increasing polarization over forestry activities within our territory. Decisions about the use of our forestry resources in our territory need to be made by Pachidot. Pachidot has always harvested and managed our forestry resources, including old-growth cedar, for cultural, ceremonial, domestic, and economic purposes. Our constitutional right to make decisions about forestry resources within our territory as a governing authority in our territory must be respected. We are in the process of undertaking an integrated resource stewardship plan that will be developed by our community, for our community, and will be led by our hereditary and elected leaders. Our stewardship plan will include the identification of special sites, traditional use areas, and places where conservation measures will be in place. Given our governance rights, this stewardship plan must guide forestry activities within our territory. To provide our community with the time necessary to develop our stewardship plan, we've secured commitments from tenure holders and the government of British Columbia to suspend and defer third-party forestry activities within specific areas identified by Pachidot. This will result in the implementation of an immediate interim conservation measure. We are also engaged in treaty and other government-to-government negotiations with British Columbia and Canada to recognize our Aboriginal rights, including governance rights. This isn't the letter I thought it was going to be, but our rightful ownership and management of forestry resources within our territory need to be acknowledged. All parties need to respect that it is up to Pachidot people to determine how our forestry resources will be used. We do not welcome or support unsolicited involvement or interference by others in our territory, including third-party activism. Pachidot needs to be left in peace to engage in our community-led stewardship planning process so that we can determine our own way forward as a strong and independent nation. Signed by the hereditary chief and the chief elected councillor. So, I don't know.
They both have the same last name. Interesting.
Yeah. They're often, so when the English come in.
It's like, you take this name now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, remember that Heritage Minute where we celebrate the fact that we allowed the Irish in Quebec to keep their names?
Yeah.
But we didn't let the natives do the same?
Heritage Minutes are so fun. I love the new one that just came out.
What was that?
Is that
the one with the insulin?
Yeah.
What did I didn't see it.
It's
let's watch it now. Come on, online.
Okay. Yeah, it's glorifying the story of how we discovered insulin.
And there's a poor, sickly 13-year-old boy suffering from diabetes.
We can't starve this poor child to death. Everyone else on disability, forget them. They can starve.
Okay. Let's see here.
I've got to show this for the audience if they haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Pardon?
We got to show this for the audience.
Okay. I think I got it.
I was surprised they were still making these.
You know, it's part of Justin Trudeau's rebrand. The new.
I think he's due for a new tattoo.
No, don't give him any ideas.
Okay. New Heritage Minute. Discovery of insulin. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Can you hear
Leonard
it?
Thompson.
Yep.
13 years old. Diabetes mellitus. 65 pounds. Starve the child to let them live. The treatment's as cruel as the disease. It's a death sentence.
Dr. Banting, this could be it. He's the first to receive this trial. But will it save him?
It's not pure enough. So we try again. And again. And again.
Before the discovery of insulin, diabetes was a death sentence. Banting, Best, Collop, and MacLeod's breakthrough has saved millions of lives. Leonard Thompson's was the first.
Okay.
Oh, Canada.
All right. I want to pull up the picture of Dr. Banting as like a communist statue. Can everyone, do you remember that?
No, wasn't that? Are you confusing him with Norman Bethune?
Nah, yeah, you're right. I messed up.
Sorry to disappoint, because
no,
that's
it's
like one of
okay.
my favorite
It's
bits
okay.
of trivia. It's like Norman Bethune, yeah, so great. It's like, hey, so how do you feel about the fact that he's basically a cultural hero in China and was openly communist? Like,
He died like treating Chinese revolutionaries.
yeah, like dude was passionate about communism.
Okay, so if I'm mistaken, Canada, this is insulin was developed at Connaught Labs, right?
Mhm.
And so they said, like, Banting and Best and the other one, and then MacLeod. But MacLeod wasn't the scientist, right? MacLeod was the financier who tried to privatize it. Isn't that correct?
I don't know, but if that's the case, then oh my god, that makes it even worse.
It's all in Lyndon McQuaig's new book, The Sport and Prey of Capitalists.
I've been meaning to read that book. Oh.
It's so good.
Too many books, not enough time, man.
Too many books, not enough time. Yeah.
No, they really need to make a second part to that commercial though now, because it's like, who gets insulin for, like, they were selling it, the patent, for like $1 back in the day because they wanted it to be accessible to the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting for part 2. In the United States, you have to starve this child so that they can live with diabetes. It's that, or
there's a lot of really
$12,000.
depressing stories from diabetic people in the States where they can't afford insulin.
Yeah.
And if they can't get to Canada to buy it, many of them die.
Mm-hmm.
Which
goes against everything they started back in the day. And, they like to glorify this one good deed we did, but what happened afterwards? What happened when we sold off the labs, which led to the current crisis that we're in, where we can't manufacture our own vaccine because they decided to privatize it?
We can't manufacture anything. We have no manufacturing sector. It all, I often say the last decent liberal was John Turner in the 1980s when he was opposing NAFTA. But even then, it was very, very shallow. And his government, and particularly Pierre Elliott Trudeau's government, were actively in the business of privatizing public assets, whether it be Petro-Canada, whether it be the development of the privatization of different pieces of Connaught Labs and restructuring Connaught Labs and other things like that. So that when we end up in this neoliberal moment with Brian Mulroney, everything is gone. Like, we enter into NAFTA and we end up with this crushing recession from Jean Chrétien. And the dollar took a fucking hit with Jean Chrétien. And then we end up in this situation now. We're in a global pandemic 30 years after neoliberalism, NAFTA, all these other horrible things which have stripped away our industrial power, where we're now like a raw resource extraction country. That's our fucking economy, which is stupid because it wasn't that way before. We were a manufacturing powerhouse. We were taking raw materials from other places. We didn't have to do it here, but now we're exporting, steel. We're exporting lumber, like all this sort of stuff. Yeah, the recession was entirely blamed on Bob Rae for people getting a couple of days off a year. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really shows that neoliberalism is not our friend. And on that sort of related note about economic troubles and everything, it was also interesting to see how the liberals, by having a minority government when the pandemic hit, were basically forced into doing the right thing by the NDP and the Greens for a while. Which, I mean, that's like, you should be doing the right thing all the time, but whatever, I'll take it when I can get it. And it's just so really unfortunate to see lots of people thinking still like I don't know if you want to call it manufacturing consent from the media or something, but so many people thinking, yeah, see, the liberals got us through this crisis. It's like, hang on, they've bungled a ton of stuff, and they were only held accountable by like the threat of losing power from the actual left-wing progressive parties. Like
Literally just 20 of them.
But they're still taking
absolutely
credit for it.
ridiculous.
That's the thing. They're still taking credit for what they did. And it's like, well, first of all, what you did was under pressure from the NDP. Second of all, it didn't help everyone because everyone on disability was suffering. Oh, but you're so used to living in poverty. Your expenses didn't go up, which is a lie. Our expenses went up because there's a lot of people who couldn't go to their food banks. They can't risk going on transit, going to stores. You can't just order in all the time. You know, they needed PPE, they needed hand sanitizer. None of that was supplied.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people on disability have their immune systems are compromised, so they can't go out, so they need to order in more. A lot of people, their expenses went up too. But
and also
matter.
the federal government opened up the medical assistance in dying.
Don't get me started on that one.
Sorry, but yeah, it's like
you won't pay for our
bastard.
medication, but you will pay for the medication to kill us.
Yeah, it's an utter gong show.
Because I used to use that as a joke, a sarcastic joke, since my mental health issues include like I've had suicide attempts and stuff like this, and it's like, oh, but they'll never include me on this, ha ha ha. And it's like, whoa, you're now saying that I can apply for this now, is what you're saying.
Just in case people thought that the liberals were actually a good and progressive party, which they are not. But to bring it all back,
They're
to
evil,
Sean's
man.
point,
They're fucking
Yeah.
evil.
yeah,
We
again,
won't
like
pay
as
for
I said
your
earlier,
health.
they're just two
Like
sides of the same
supervillain
ruling class
evil.
coin.
Is it? We won't pay for your housing. We won't pay to make sure you get enough food. We won't pay for your medications. But if you want help dying, we're there for that. Where's the Heritage commercial for that?
Make it happen, Sandee. But at the sock, a proud part of our heritage.
Killing people who have no other option in Canada.
Yeah. But to bring it back to Sean's point about manufacturing, is that Canada actually has a really good opportunity right now to get back into manufacturing as far as a green recovery is concerned. We can become a leader in green vehicles, batteries, manufacturing and processing all the materials needed for a green and sustainable recovery, because we have so many of these materials and the industry is fresh and we're building more renewables. It's kind of like we have a real opportunity here. And governments, provincial and federal, are saying, yeah, but and again, there's that great piece by Breach Media pointing out that the federal government, formed a secret post-pandemic recovery filled with like the minister and deputy minister of natural resources and economic development, and like all the big wig execs from Canada's oil and gas lobby. And that's what's going to dictate the post-pandemic recovery, rather than, we have a real opportunity here. It is so bad. Like, these people do not deserve to be in government. And then people say, well, then Conservatives will get in. We have the NDP. We also have the Green Party. If the NDP isn't your jam, but you still want meaningful action on climate change, like, actually do that. The NDP is so many people's second choice. I just wish we could make them say, you know what? No, enough with these two terrible parties. Let the NDP have a chance, even if it's just in a minority government and still maybe disappoint us. At least give them a chance to actually try and put some of this stuff forward. And
I want to be
do the things
disappointed by somebody
so
new.
many Canadians want. We're like, we want UBI, we want a wealth tax. And the Liberals are saying, yes, well, we need to find money. You voted down a wealth tax, assholes. Like,
the money is there. The money is there, man. Like we have so much money that just disappears. And
4.4 billion in Ontario.
Yeah, and that's that direct transfer funds. That's direct transfer funds from the federal government to the provincial government. They have no idea where it went.
And what is it?
Nobody knows.
Several hundred
4.4
billion that's like lost in offshore
4.4
tax havens.
No. $4.4 billion the Ford government lost. They have the Auditor General said you've lost. They were given like $12 billion to deal with COVID, right? They lost $4.4 billion. They have no idea where it went. The provincial government. Like, this is like it's not even. This isn't
I hate
even
this province so much,
This
man.
isn't even on like giving $12 million to Loblaws for new fridges. You gave $4.4 billion to Doug Ford. You fucking pocketed it probably, or gave it away to long-term care. Or Mike Harris has it, right, to get a new roof put on the cottage. Like, it
The
doesn't
Weston
matter.
family.
Like the Westons, the Thompsons, like all these horrible scumbags.
The
that rule our
Irving Empire
country.
in New Brunswick needs to die.
The scumbags. It's like,
Well, they need to pay those long-term care home shareholders all their money's worth for letting
showing
people
up to the board meetings.
die.
Thanks for letting Grandma die. Here's your Order of Ontario medal. This is totally not political.
Here's millions of dollars too, just because.
Oh, actually, sorry. On an unrelated note, I've been kind of thinking of something. I recently found out that like you can request, you have to pay through the nose for it, but you can actually request that the Governor General and Heraldry Canada issue you a coat of arms. The question is, do I solicit people on the internet for like donations to save up for a coat of arms and just make like one of the worst possible coat of arms? The words say ACAB, like ACAB is the family motto in Latin, or like find a way to say ACAB in Latin. Show, like handcuffs and just terrible brutalizing RCMP as like the standard bearers, and just really like make a statement to the Canadian Heraldic Society and see if they'll actually have the audacity to pay for such a thing. Should I try and do that, or is that not worth the money and the time and the effort?
If people are going to give me money for a stupid project, I'm pretty sure I could come up with some stuff like a new heritage commercial.
There you go. Although, as True North Radio is saying, we could always just eat the rich, which, I mean, I'm always down for.
Why does the larger of the class not simply eat the small?
That's how you know they've clearly had like some kind of communist revolution. But then that begs the question of why he's like a king with a crown. Communists are pretty against monarchy, so that's something that we need to find out from Futurama.
Yeah, it's definitely we could get into like what is socialism, but we probably shouldn't. I think that's probably the most contentious issue on the left. By definition, it's a way to stateless communism, but like I'm fine with the transition period. I'm not a communist.
Look, I just know that capitalism needs to die, whether it's like socialism,
well,
communism,
it goes down to
anarchism,
the same thing, like
facadism, like it's
like
something better than capitalism.
I want to be disappointed at something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great. Put that on a T-shirt and sell it
with a hammer and sickle on it.
Yeah,
I want to be disappointed by something
I'm so
new.
disappointed
Sandee
by the
said
liberals.
that.
Yeah, I'm so disappointed in the liberals and conservatives so much. It's not even shocking anymore. I need to feel alive here. Somebody else needs to disappoint me.
I mean, in my dream world, political parties don't exist, and we all own the means to our own production and work cooperatively towards the betterment of our communities and our societies in a very communist or anarchistic or anarcho-communistic way. That's my dream world, but I would settle if we still had to have some kind of party structure. I would settle for the NDP being the centrist party, the Liberals being the right-wing party, along with like the Greens, or Greens also kind of centrist, and there being an actual like proper mainstream socialist or communist party that's to the left of the NDP. And so that's really just like the NDP is like, they don't care about workers. NDP are like, no, dude, we literally care about workers. We just have these nuanced disagreements. And then there's the liberals saying, but like, have you considered doing 50 studies on the thing and spending $268 billion on warships?
First of all,
And that's how I segue into the news story.
how do I get to be one of these people paid to do these studies? You know, if they're going to study things like people on disability needing more money, how can I be one of these people that they pay for that?
You gotta like ride the cursor on the procurement website for the federal government and just hit refresh all the time. But you can also get email notifications sent to you when they're seeking someone to do a study, and just put a proposal in.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
could also donate a ton of money to liberal campaigns and then get a patronage appointment.
See, that's what I need to raise my money for.
Shooting for the Senate.
Oh yeah, get in there.
Well, here's the
I'd
thing.
be a good senator.
We'd all be better senators than Lynn Bayak.
We'd
Thankfully,
be better
she's gone
senators
now.
than any of the ones that are there right now.
True. The problem is that, and this is something that I found out, which again I've pointed out in my like recent video series, which is basically just a crash course in Canadian politics and civics. In order to be, it's not something I really touched on, but it's something that I have because, like, as people have seen in my old stack of books that I had behind my desk, the requirements for being a senator in Canada mean you have to have X amount of disposable income and you have to own land, which is just like, so like, why is this the quote unquote house of sober second thought? This is a BS institution. Either reform it and make it truly democratic and accountable to the people, or abolish the thing. New Zealand got rid of their Senate. They seem to work just fine.
I'm game for getting rid of the Senate.
I mean, ideally, I would still like to see it reformed rather than outright abolished. But at the same time, if that proves impossible, I'm like, yeah, then fine, abolish it. Like,
Whenever anyone talks about the Senate, I always like to say, call me a Mulcair New Democrat, but I, for one, think we should abolish the Senate.
Oh God.
I always remember that was his, he thought he was going to win 2015 with like, we're going to abolish the Senate. Like,
Oh, I thought he was going to win by making music videos.
no.
See, Tom Mulcair and the NDP thought that they would win by promising Canadians more of the same, just with a different color. It's like, look, we still promise austerity and good governance, but we'll be orange instead of blue. And Justin Trudeau and the Liberals rightly saw an opportunity that people want to change. And so it's going to be the last election with first past the post and gender balanced cabinet and more immigrants and refugees, and the sun will shine again, and we're going to legalize marijuana. And
Sunny days, my friends.
Here's a little tip. You can't spell liberal without L-I-E.
Exactly.
Just saying.
But like,
see, the problem is, and I'm just gonna butt in. The NDP always tries to run on like a realistic plan, but we end up in situations like Justin Trudeau in 2015, where he's just like, "We're gonna do all this shit, and it's gonna be fucking awesome. You're gonna love it." And he puts on the jean jacket. He like goes and like, holds up the feather, talks to Theresa Spence. It's like, we're gonna have a new relation, the most important relationship, and we're gonna do right by Indigenous people because the Harper government is horrible and they treat Native people like really bad, but we're gonna be better. And he's got the Gord Downey jean jacket on, and he's saying like, we're gonna run deficits, we're gonna make public sector, we're gonna have an infrastructure bank, and all the lefties are like,
and the infrastructure bank has lost money.
It's so stupid. It's an infrastructure bank that isn't a bank and doesn't do infrastructure.
And it's lost money. It's like, what is this thing?
And yeah, we're gonna do all these things, and it's gonna be great. And they didn't do anything. They legalized marijuana, yes. And number two, which I always give credit on, is the Canada Child Tax Benefit. It's good.
Okay, all right.
It's a net good thing.
Yeah, that helps me.
And also in a small one, they also reestablished the Kitsilano Coast Guard post, which did help in terms of like jobs, greater oversight of like marine welfare and biodiversity. So in that sense, for Kitsilano, okay, great. How much of a national good is that? Not much, but for the people of Kitsilano, okay.
Well, the liberals aren't idiots. They're still aware that they have to give some food to their base. So they pick and choose the few things that they actually follow through on. But for the vast majority of things, the stuff that the progressives tend to want, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Pharmacare when?
Probably the same time they finish their study on people with disabilities.
Yeah, unfortunately. But again, yes, liberals have done some good things, but at the same time, as Sean pointed out earlier, they're basically evil. This is not a good system to have, where you're basically choosing between two parties. Like the analogy I've made for most political parties, including also the situation in the States between Biden and Trump, is Biden is a shot in the foot, whereas Trump would be a shot to the head. Ideally, you don't want to be in a situation where you're getting shot at all, and one should rightfully think, is there a situation where I'm not shot? Because I would prefer that. But unfortunately, we live in a neoliberal nightmare, and so you basically have to get shot, and so you have to choose where you get shot. So that's the quote-unquote harm reduction, but the point of that is that you're still in a situation where there's a gun, and it's like, this is not okay. Like, oh my God. But this is the unfortunate reality that so many of us live in. And for people not fully aware of this, is it's kind of a similar situation in Europe as well, where there's lots of parties. And we think, for example, I have like some old friends of the family in Denmark. One of them is a social worker there. And he and many others are supremely disappointed in their current social democrat government for cutting back on a lot of programs and basically kicking out Syrian refugees, saying, "Oh, look, see, parts of Syria are safe to go to, so we're revoking your residency and you can go back to Syria now," which is that is fucked up. These people have set up their lives here and it's quote unquote safe enough. Oh, really? Cool. Go test it out. Go live in Syria for a few months. Make absolutely sure. But you don't want to do that? Why not? Because it's not as safe as you claim? There's definitely some anger over there from actual leftists who are pissed off at their quote unquote left party. So this is not a uniquely North American problem. This is everywhere in the West, where people are clearly recognizing that the current system is broken and not helping them. But it's hard to tell if it's a lack of a combination of apathy or a lack of courage or fear of, but the other party could still win, so we got to try and support one or the other. But so many people in the West are rightly recognizing that the current system is untenable and the current parties in power are terrible and not actually representing what people want. Canadians want a wealth tax. They want electoral reform. And yet consistently governments, be they red or blue, do not deliver on this for them.
Well, it's just
it is so frustrating.
The liberals are just very good at branding is really all it is. And they're very good at saying, we're going to get an ombudsperson to look into the mining corporations around the world.
Yeah.
And then they say that. They say that, but then they don't follow through on it. And all people remember is that they said that. And so people remember when they say certain things, but then they unplug so much that you almost have to remind them. It's like, hey, remember he promised electoral reform? It's like, oh yeah, I guess he did. Yeah.
And they blame it on the NDP that they killed electoral reform.
Okay, see, funny story, right? I remember actively participating in those town halls that the Liberals were doing to try and get support and find out what Canadians wanted.
MP that was running them.
Okay. But yeah, I just remember in the wake of that going to my local MP's town hall in one of the neighborhoods. And again, what I heard overwhelmingly from the people in that room and in successive town halls and from other people around the country was, we want proportional representation. And the Liberals came back eventually saying, well, there was no clear consensus. I'm like, bullshit. it
You
was
buried the
consent
report.
that you didn't like.
No, I know people specifically. That's the only reason why they voted for Liberal. Only.
Yeah.
Last
one of the big
election with
reasons
first
that they
past
got
the
a
post. Oh
minority.
my god!
You know, a lot of people were disenfranchised by the Liberals, but they were still scared enough of Erin O'Toole. But the Conservative Party in Canada can't crack 30%.
You don't
Because they
need that
keep
much
just
more.
going like further and further down
You don't need that much more, though. Like,
to win a majority.
what is it?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, to win a majority, you can
36.
be in the 30s and win a majority.
36.
35 or 36% is the magic number.
Yeah, because in 2011, the NDP got 30.5 for 103 seats. Now, NDP vote is more efficient than a Liberal Party vote. The Liberals need to do like 38, 39. Tories need to beat like 36, 37. The NDP would have to do like 40 fucking percent to win a majority government. Just because of voter efficiency in different ridings. There's a bunch of other different factors. Like the fact of the matter is that the Liberals need to win like 35 seats in Quebec if they want a majority government again, and it's not going to happen. The Bloc Québécois are back. And most of the seats that would be contentious are Bloc Québécois and NDP seats right now.
Yeah, which then just makes me want to point that out to people and also remind them that the NDP is the only other competitive party anywhere west of Winnipeg. Because
west of Thunder Bay, man, like Northern Ontario is NDP land.
There are some Liberal ridings up there, but yeah, it's like hardcore, mining, labor, and Indigenous people. So Northern Ontario is usually pretty solid, both provincially and federally for the NDP. Same with like usually Northern Manitoba and Saskatchewan are also pretty solid for that. I know recently they flipped blue because people were just like, oh no, time for a change. But this is something I've pointed out numerous times, like on Twitter and on other panels, and I think I even made 1 or 2 videos about it. But the Liberals, really, to win a majority for them, like you said, they need Quebec, which really means they just need to win the greater Montreal area and like a few other places, like the Outaouais and like maybe a few in Quebec and like Quebec City, that is. And that's usually how they can get like a good chunk there. And then if they win, that good chunk of, Greater Montreal and a few others in Quebec, if they do that, and if they win the Greater Toronto area, the lower mainland of BC, and like a fistful of seats in the Maritimes, well, and of course Ottawa, right?
And all of Toronto.
Well, yeah, that's why I said like the GTA, right?
Yeah.
So basically they only have to win these 5 areas and they can get a majority. And while that's technically cross country, it's not really the broadest possible representation of Canadians. Meanwhile, the Conservatives suffer a similar problem where they really only seem to represent the prairies and rural Southern Ontario. That's a very selective regional, rural, small town kind of thing. The NDP is the only party that seems to I know they still struggle in the Maritimes, but the NDP is still competitive in a lot of ridings from Quebec to BC. Yeah. You can find NDP seats across these areas or where they've come in second or, in third in some contests, but like it's been a close third. It's been like, a three-way race or something across all parts of Canada, basically, whether there's population, rural communities, Western Canada, Eastern Canada, French Canada, English Canada, immigrant communities, rural agrarian communities. The NDP can actually have that broad reach. And yet there's a lot of people thinking, no, we have to vote for Liberals. It's like, it just takes you to not do that for one election cycle. And the NDP is actually a very competitive party in so many provinces. It's so frustrating.
Well, one thing that I like to...
It's what's bothering me today, damn it.
Here's what's bothering me today.
He went there. He went there.
Here's what's bothering me. Not enough people realize that there are no provincial Liberal parties from Winnipeg to British Columbia.
Well, technically there's a Liberal Party, but it's basically the Conservative Party in BC.
Exactly. Western urban seats, absolutely. Ditching where probably a mistake. Who knows? Western sentiment. I think that's a good point, Con Man. Only the NDP can pick up federal seats in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and they're going to be competitive in a lot of the lower mainland, particularly around things like Burnaby North. Burnaby North Seymour, that was a nail biter. There's a chance for Nanaimo to flip back to the NDP. There's a really good candidate there, and Paul Manley. I don't think the Greens have the infrastructure to do it, especially if they're trying to pick up the leader's seat in Toronto Centre. Never going to happen.
That whole thing was so weird to me.
No, because they're trying to push this bullshit like, oh, people shouldn't vote NDP. They should just vote Green Party in these like 5 ridings where it could happen, which is fucking stupid. If people want to vote NDP, they should be able to vote NDP. That's the reason you have political parties. It's not about like propping them up because, oh, we're like ideological allies. Like, sorry, folks, I'd rather vote Tory or Liberal than vote Green. Like, it's never gonna happen.
For me, not so much. But like,
See,
I understand the sentiment.
I wouldn't vote.
The Communist Party is alive and thriving in this area, so that's always an option.
Yeah. Well, hey, Devin, how are you?
What about the Marxist-Leninist Party, though, Sandee?
I had a good friend of mine ran for a socialist party in Ontario in 2014, and I did join the Socialist Party to support their nomination.
Actually, I've pointed this before. Technically, at the moment, I am a card-carrying member of the Green Party, but that was literally because they opened up membership, and Dimitri Lascaris and Mariam Haddad were running for the leadership, and I was like, these are really the only candidates I care about, and one of them is like an unashamed democratic socialist, and that was so refreshing to hear. And so again, like there's a clear appetite for that because all of a sudden, wow, record Green Party membership is like, yeah, almost like people actually saw an opportunity to try and get a more national voice for some of these ideas and were genuinely excited at the thought of this and thought it can happen. Which just makes me think like NDP, please just stop being tame and tepid and just be like, no, like, you know what? The next big telecom company that screws up, they're getting nationalized. We're going to renationalize Air Canada. And we're going to make farmers socialist again. By the way, free Palestine. And people would just be like, yeah, I'm going to vote for this. Just be brave, be bold. Like Tommy Douglas did not get the NDP to where it was by saying, well, I think we should have just a little bit of incremental improvements in healthcare.
That's really good impression of Tommy Douglas.
Thank you. I don't really have the hair or the complexion, but did I just make your night, Sean?
You just made my night. That was really good. I haven't heard a good Tommy Douglas impression ever. And
and subscribe for more Tommy.
Like and subscribe for more impressions of social democratic leaders over the years.
I don't know about that. I can just do the halfway decent Tommy Douglas.
That's a really good Tommy Douglas impression.
Like I'd like to think that my impersonations are pretty down pat for the most part. Obviously I tend not to try and do like ethnic ones because that can be very troubling. I only ever do the ones for like my immediate family, which of course are Latinos, and as a Latino myself, I'm allowed to do that. But for example, I don't want to, completely impersonate various other people or MPs or politicians from different countries. Like I tend to avoid doing that. But I have confirmation that my Tommy Douglas is good. People said I did a pretty good Justin Trudeau once upon a time. Never really got the hang of Andrew Scheer or Stephen Harper because they're just robotic freaks. So maybe one of these days I'll get back into that. And if only Royal Canadian Air Force was still a thing, I could be a contributor.
Do you have any good impressions, Sandee?
I'm good at playing characters, but not specific people. So, like if you want somebody to be a Karen on camera or something like that, I'd be very good at doing that. And in some of my videos, I do switch over into characters. But for like specific people, I can't quite. There's a video that I want to make right now that I'm trying to get the cadence of Justin Trudeau in because it's one of his statements that I came across that I'm like, no, I can't rage about this alone. But I also don't want to read this without his cadence.
One of the ways I always describe Justin Trudeau's voice would be Pete Buttigieg trying to imitate Barack Obama. And it's sort of this, you know how Barack Obama would always say, we have a moment. And as Americans, it's important for us. Yeah, like it's very, you know, sort of this. And then, and Buttigieg is Obama. Like it's so like the strength of our conviction will lead to our freedoms. Like it's just insane. Like it's you say nothing. Like it's so funny. And then Justin Trudeau also says nothing. Like Canadians is a Canadian, is a liberal, is a Canadian. And
it's just the way he ebbs and flows it, where it's so poignant. His voice is soft.
So Justin Trudeau basically has two modes. Is when you actually ask him a question, you can see the gears trying to turn in real time. So it's a kind of a priority of our government to actually try and listen to Canadians and implement the policies that we believe that they want to see. That's his first mode. And then the other mode is his like academic mode where he's like, as my second favorite prime minister, Wilfrid Laurier, once said, and then he'll like do some kind of monologue thing. So there's like very prepared Justin Trudeau. And then there's, you can see and hear the gears turning in his head, Justin Trudeau.
Don't forget the ones where he's in very uncomfortable situations and he just goes quiet.
I would love to just like do that to Justin Trudeau one of these days. Like maybe when my hair is not so crazy and I'm wearing a proper suit or something, just pretend, you know, join something. Oh yeah, no, we're going to meet Justin Trudeau and get to ask him a question. Right. Yes. So why did you not do this, this, and this, despite saying that you would do so? And you had 7 years now to act on it and you routinely have not, even though if you did this, you would have the support of other parties. Why are you so irresponsible to the electorate you depend on? I would love that.
Who was it from the Daily Show? I think it was that interviewed him way back when.
Hassan Minhaj, but he did that as part of his own show, Patriot Act.
Oh yeah.
And Justin Trudeau semi-threatened.
Where? Like to me, that
well,
was like
this is the thing. This is the thing. The motherfucker's never been asked a real question in his fucking life.
Yeah.
Like Silver Spoon. Like, you know, like rich family, son of the prime minister. He's never been asked anything. This guy knows nothing.
I just loved the glare, though. It was just so like.
It's like, how dare you come into my house and not feed me softballs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am the son of a prime minister. How dare you ask me a real question? And look, so here's the thing. He has to go to American media to be asked a question. It's on a softball. And like, honestly, like we have good journalists in Canada, but they don't have access to the prime minister. Like, it's going to be like,
no, Sean, we brought back the press room that Stephen Harper disused for like a decade.
They pay every major news organization gets money from the federal government just to operate. And like this is then like, oh the prime minister never has to answer any. He doesn't answer questions in the House of Commons in question period anymore. He barely shows up. And you know, like good on I forget who it was. I was either a conservative or a New Democrat who brought a cardboard cutout of Justin Trudeau to put into question period.
That sounds like something a conservative would do. Let's be real here.
It was
Oh, yeah,
probably
okay,
Michelle Rempel
Yeah,
Garner.
I was gonna say if I had to put money on
the
it, it'd be
people's
Michelle.
MP, the people's MP, Michelle Rempel Garner.
Yes, the people's MP who spends most of her time in Oklahoma. Yeah, sure, okay, there, bud.
There was a Dust Bowl. She had to.
They represent true Canadian values.
Yeah.
That we're really Americans.
Well, like there's something about Alberta. I love Alberta, and no shout out to big shout out to the prairies. One of my favorite places in Canada is always Saskatchewan and Alberta.
I've never been. I want to.
I love it. I love to wear cowboy boots year round, and it's just something,
I've been to Alberta. I have family out there.
I have friends. They say, "Hey, you're welcome to crash on the couch." I basically just need to get out there.
You know what? Friends are probably better than family because family you still have to love. And if they're you don't choose them, you choose your friends. So your friends are most likely to be more in line with your values. But when you have family and you go out there and they say certain things, you're just like,
yeah, no, my friends are having a tough go of it out there in Alberta with Jason Kenney. They're like, please kill me now. It's like, I'd rather not because I'd like to come visit you and like chill in Calgary or Edmonton or go see the Badlands, go see Banff, Jasper.
Alberta is beautiful.
well, not the really, that I have.
I've literally only taken like a train through, so like I've quote unquote seen the prairies and Jasper, but I haven't like had a proper visit. I would love to because it is beautiful out there.
Oh yeah, Banff is just gorgeous.
If I was forcibly relocated from the First Nations reservation that I live on, I would move to Alberta.
Can you just transfer me to this First Nations reservation in Alberta? apply to like officially join another Indigenous nation.
They have to vote on it, which is really funny.
Well,
actually, maybe you can fill me in just like a completely unrelated question. Is it possible to actually, like, as a First Nations person, be adopted by another First Nations tribe?
Yes, they vote on it. It's called a membership transfer. And it's a procedure through Indigenous Services Canada where you transfer your Aboriginal title from one First Nation to another.
That sounds
and it's like you got to
so
campaign
bureaucratic.
For it.
My God.
You got to campaign for it. It's like an election. So when they have election day, they elect the local leadership. And then they also might have some membership votes. So, they're like, I don't know who that is. Like, they're not a member here. It's so Indian Act. Actually, here's an interesting story. My father was not from this community. He has heritage from a community in Northern Ontario. And he, just to sort of make things easier on me and like my kids, he did a transfer of status from his community into ours. And he was a business owner in this community and a firefighter. And he was voted in as a member here. So now my father is a member of this community.
Okay, cool.
And that's how it works.
Yeah,
it's like an election. Like you got to be like, hey, vote me in to join.
I mean, on the one hand, like that's a democratic way of choosing people who are going to be a part of your community. Yep. At the same time, it also just feels so bureaucratic and kind of like official by the books, as opposed to like, yes, we ceremonially welcome you, Ojibwe, Cree, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron, like Wendat, like, yeah, you're now part of this tribe now, welcome. It seems like you said, dude, like it's like an election, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, yeah, which like strikes me as very surreal and weird. But at the same time, like, okay, but it's a community, it's democracy in the community. I can't really take issue with that.
Oh man, that's not something I'd be able to handle the rejection of if you're trying to be accepted to a community and stuff. Like, I'd only ever attempt that if I was damn sure I'd get in, because that level of rejection, ouch. Because it's one thing to be rejected as a political person.
It's not as like, that doesn't mean that you're not a resident, right? Like it's not, like kicking you out from your home. It's about, do you get treaty and Aboriginal title from our community,
Right.
as opposed to the community that you were a part of.
Yeah.
It's a bit different.
No, I get it, but it's still just like, that's fascinating. So thank you for filling us in, and probably the viewers. One of the things I love about Brave New North is the show teaches me a little bit more about Indigenous people and perspectives and the goings on, and I also learn a little bit of Anishinaabe, so that's always nice. I learned what Jaganash means recently.
A white person,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a bit
White
of a
man.
slur.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's used in the same way that, for example, my dad's side of the family like to use the term white people, like WYTPIPO, like white people.
Yeah, it's because you don't get Zuckerberg. That's why you do it.
Yeah. But it's basically kind of like when I heard, like, Jaganash means white man, I'm like, I think I know exactly what this means in what context, because my family uses it too. But
yeah, it's always funny, and we have a good time. Like, I was like, when Brandon Amyad is on, and like he
shout out to Brandon, dope comrade.
Yeah, he's a great. They're a great person. And
right, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, they're a great person and do good work in student movement and for Indigenous people. So shout out to Brandon.
They provided some pretty great insights from the NDP convention recently as well. I remember seeing various sort of posts from them about that.
We did like a huge post-conventions thread, and like literally every delegate logged on and was like, what the fuck happened? And it was really funny because I've been doing shows like in the weeks after convention, and people are like, yeah, like I watched the show after convention. I was so riled up.
I went to the convention back in, like, what was it, 2019?
Oh yeah,
the year of the federal election in Hamilton.
Yep.
That was very interesting.
I didn't make it to that one because my kids were being born. And
I
so
mean, I feel like that's more important.
I called in to my my committee, and I was actually I gave a speech and was elected as an officer of the provincial party over telephone.
Wow. Congrats.
But
the thing I like about conventions are the workshops. I'm always interested in the workshops.
there's they're doing tons of workshops right now, and it's actually like really nice to see, both Ontario and federally. There's tons of things available. Like, you can literally just go on the website and like learn tons of stuff about like how to run campaigns, or like literally accessing databases and all this sort of thing. They're doing really good stuff. I see the NDP as like the most logical place where I end up ideologically, and I do my best to make sure that they do well. And also, I like to have a bully pulpit where I can yell at people, but I don't do it publicly because I'm not that kind of a guy. I just have a little bully pulpit, and that's what I do.
There you go. Now, I've again, aside from the recent attempt at trying to elect a Democratic Socialist, that's the first time I've ever joined a political party. Normally, I'm very much from the outside and then canvass for candidates I like. Normally, they tend to be NDP because, like, yeah. But for me, it's always just about, again, like you said, like, of the main parties that have a shot of getting power representation, forcing the government's hand on things, NDP is really the only party that fits closest to all my things. I know I have a lot of friends in my area, which is, it's basically an area that reliably tends to go liberal NDP, but you'll always have a few thousand people voting for Green Party. So I have some friends and family who are like, you know what? No, I'm going to vote Green Party this year. Like, I know the the Liberal or the NDP candidate's going to win, but I like the cut of this candidate's jib kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which on the one hand, okay, I get, but at the same time, internally, I'm screaming, can we all please just actually vote for the working class party so we can start fixing the mountain of shit that the conservatives and liberals have foisted upon us? That would be really nice. I would appreciate that. And that would mean less work from all of us in the future. So if we could all kind of do that, and also if young people would actually show up, because no, voter apathy does not make you a cool rebel. What makes you a cool rebel is sticking it to the old people in power and voting for parties they don't want you to vote for, like the NDP. So
Yeah. No, our elections are far more interesting and complicated than people think. In 2018, I decided to torture myself, and for the provincial election here, I wanted to break down the gender of every candidate of every party of every riding.
okay,
I did it. Let's just say I've mentioned in some of my videos before, I'm obsessive compulsive, and I only add the D to the end when it's an issue. So that wasn't an issue, but it was a drive. And so there were several hundred. And it's just like, there's over 23 parties in Ontario.
Yeah.
And just to break down the fact that it's like, there was a libertarian in every riding.
I mean, like, yeah,
and the
like
gender breakdown was insane. Like, just looking at the independents, like, versus the libertarians, and the libertarians were worse in gender balance than the independents were. And yeah, it was just, and a lot of the candidates were sketchy because a lot of the people, I didn't know what their gender necessarily was based from their name. And so I'd have to Google them, and you just come to like this Word doc page or something that just has their name on it, but it's like no other information about them other than they're libertarian. And it's like,
I had so I was a candidate for election in 2018 in Peterborough, Kawartha, and I did a debate on arts and culture media issues with the Liberal candidate, the Libertarian candidate, and the Trillium Party candidate. And the Trillium Party were this far-right Christian party at the time. And the Libertarian candidate couldn't make it, but he wrote a statement to be read at the beginning. The Conservative didn't show up to the debate. I slayed a cabinet minister that night, by the way, in a debate, which is very, very fun. And it's recorded for posterity somewhere on the internet of me discussing a Liberal cabinet minister.
Link.
I'll find it someday, and just you can listen to it. And it was very, very funny. But this Libertarian candidate, his statement, like, he sent it on like stationery, yellow envelope, like whatever. And it was just, the government should have nothing to do with arts and culture. Thank you very much. It was literally, he sent that in as a letter to this debate. There were 300 people in the room.
Oh my God. You know what? Libertarians are fun. If nothing else than to just be like, hey, what up? I'm the Libertarian. It's like, yeah, cool. You do you, babe. Like,
good job, buddy.
Oh.
There was one at the, it wasn't quite a town hall. It was like you had different groups of tables, and each table had a subject, and then you could rotate through the tables and stuff. Yeah. But all the candidates at the beginning could say something, and at the end could say something. And it's just like, how is it that the Libertarian is showing up, but the Conservative isn't?
Because the Libertarians are actually passionate about what they believe in.
Here, cynical. He's actually on the doors, not at debates. Debates are a waste of time. If you're a candidate, don't do debates. Just go to the doors. There's my hot take. The debates are a waste of your time. Go and identify your vote. I did 23 debates in a 28-day period in 2018. It was a giant waste of my time, and the reason I'm not a fucking cabinet minister.
Well, now you've learned. Now we can all go on.
And now
Also,
I know I don't want to be a cabinet minister, so we're okay.
well, there you go. Actually, that's another thing. Several people have said, like either in my YouTube comments and also just friends who know me IRL or people who meet me at parties and hear what I have to say. A lot of people say, you should get into politics. And I just think, listen, I've seen how political lives are. It's 24/7. It never ends. And like, I kind of want to have a life outside of all this terror. So, no, thank you. I will happily campaign. I will advocate for greater political reform, but being a politician, don't know about that.
Like I'm literally a politician, right? Like everybody knows that, right?
Yeah, and like that's fine. I just know
yeah.
that I could probably never do that. I'm much
Oh,
more
I know.
comfortable being an outsider
in the
though.
community, right? Like I do work in the community. I also have another job working in politics.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, like
it is what it is, and you're exactly right. Like when you get into, say, provincial politics, federal politics, even like large labor politics, it's a 24/7 job, and it's really hard to have a life. And I've talked to friends of mine who are MPPs. I've talked to friends of mine who are cabinet ministers in various governments. It's really, really difficult, and it's a really lonely life.
You see, that's why I was thinking I was well equipped for this, because the research said that most politicians end up broken. And I'm like, I'm already there. I've got nothing to lose.
There you go.
Nothing to lose. What, you think this will drive me crazy? I'm already crazy. Like, it's just, I know how to cope with it, though. That's the thing. Like, I have coping mechanisms. I know how to deal with isolation. I know how to deal with stress. I know how to deal with bombardments of ideas and thoughts and all this sort of stuff. Like, I'm actually more well equipped than the person who has no experience with being derailed going into politics.
Sandee 2022. Come on, let's see it happen.
I made my attempt.
I'm gonna run for just 1 second. I just gotta go check on the little humans that are next door. But I've got one last story we should look at before we say goodnight. I'll be right back.
All right.
No,
well,
this
he's
gives
gone.
us, like, perfect opportunity to talk about him.
Right. So for everyone watching, I have dirt on Sean Conway.
Ooh.
I'm just kidding. Or am I? But one thing that
I hear he has kids.
yeah, exactly. But like as something that I just sort of want to bring up, and like maybe it's the anarchist in me or something, but I've never really liked the idea much of like officially tying myself to a party and doing stuff like that. So, and it's not that I don't believe in electoralism. Like hell, I just made a series recently and pointing out, hey, actually, electoralism, especially in terms of municipal politics that affect a great many aspects of our daily lives, are very much important. And showing people either that you can get a voice in a larger avenue, and if not, well then, oh look, that's something wrong with the system, so how do we challenge that in new ways? So in that sense, it's important as a learning tool, and it can just be a tool in general. But at the same time, I definitely get way more excited about doing stuff outside of traditional power structures that are absolutely going to piss off the people in power. So Sean was saying about like community activism and stuff like that. I used to do a lot more of it in the past. I haven't been able to do much of it lately between both this YouTube thing and also my full-time job. But I do actually try and still have my sort of actual IRL do good stuff beyond just charities, donations, and canvassing and stuff like that. And I'm not going to tell people what all the projects are because a lot of them are very slow moving. But one thing that I've moved on right now is that, or that I'm trying to move on, because I've been talking with some other leftists from other parts of this field in question. I am hopefully going to start working on something soon that is going to piss off both conservatives and liberals, both provincially and federally. And I feel really great that that's a possibility of me just beginning to work on this and try and get the organizational gears in motion, even though throughout most of it, I'm going to have a very hands-off approach.
Mhm.
But the idea of being able to piss off conservatives and liberal in both the provincial and federal sphere is, to me, just like, even just like saying it out loud now is like, I'm really happy now. Like, that's how.
Well, the thing that amazes me is I've learned how many of my Twitter followers don't bother to watch my videos because I have a lot of liberals following me.
They do that though. They're like a cult, right? Like
They'll follow you
like,
to try and like drag.
oh my
you.
god, you like dunk
like,
on
you have
conservatives? That's so cool.
It's like they have not seen any of my videos then, because I have the things I have said about the Liberal Party in my videos.
It's like that Samuel L. Jackson meme I love from Pulp Fiction, where it just says, you know, like when I'm dunking on liberals and a conservative or a Republican chimes in, I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
Well, after my
And
video
that's
about
absolutely me.
well, that's the thing. Like after my video about Bill C-10, I realized, you know what? In that video, I didn't actually talk about politics, and I had a bunch of conservatives follow me after that. I'm like, you're going to be sorely disappointed when you see anything else I do.
You know, like an old school Joe Clark conservative has more in touch and in common with a 2021 New Democrat than any other political party. And
Which is
it's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's not because the NDP moved right. It's because the old PC party used to be to the left. The difference is...
Remember when the progressive conservatives used to be occasionally progressive?
Yeah. Like, I think of this. Okay. The founding of Confederation, John A. Macdonald, conservatives, right? They enfranchised and gave the vote to Indigenous people. Right? Right off the top.
But wasn't that still conditional on like they had to give up their status or something like that?
If they had property, they could vote. Just like everybody else. And they did. Some people did, right? Now, that was a swing vote in like 40 ridings. A couple of prime ministers later, founder of the modern Liberal Party, Wilfrid Laurier, do you know what he did? Took the right to vote away from every Indigenous man, woman, child, whoever. Took it away.
Natives can't win in this country, man.
Until 1960.
Diefenbaker,
who I argue, and I saw, okay, I mean, it's 10:18. I'm going to drop my controversial, I saw this on Twitter this week. Some people saying like, oh, Lester Pearson was the greatest PM. Like, if we even really had one. I'm thinking Diefenbaker. Just like a tiny little bit. Diefenbaker. Pretty good. Populist. Not a lunatic. Not like, he wasn't like wild about anything. He was very insular, protectionist, one Canada expansion, like multi-sector economy, good speaker. He was really nice to my buddy Matt. My buddy Matt got lost in the House of Commons and showed up as his office. Like, it's pretty good. So anyways, back in the day, in those first couple of premierships in Canada, wherever the natives voted, they voted conservative. And so Laurier, when he became prime minister, he disenfranchised native voters. And it wasn't until Diefenbaker with this whole like, we'll unite the North. That was
right. Project, he had this big like northern strategy because like Cold War and like a whole bunch of stuff like that. He had that northern strategy.
And it was very much, it was about connecting Canadians to resist Americanism, to resist the like bloodthirsty capital of the United States, of other things. Canada was the only country at the time that didn't pick up the phone for the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was just for a couple of hours. But when that was happening in the United States, Diefenbaker said, fuck those guys. Fuck those Kennedys. They're pricks.
Yeah, he did not get along well with the Kennedys. The whole Avro Arrow thing as well.
Like, yeah, I think the Avro Arrow like is a really unfortunate part of Canadian history because I think it was a good thing. And I think a lot of people are really united in that. And unfortunately, it's just so the nature of dealing with market, right? If you're dealing with private market, you're trying to do private vehicular or public infrastructure going into things. It's really difficult. We could have had something really, really good, but do we want to build like fighter planes?
That's a whole thing for another time. We didn't even really talk about the $268 billion warships. Like it's.
But big shout out to Breach Media for being a heavy hitter in just their first week of being out. I think we've had like 5 dynamite stories out of them. Sandee, have you checked out any of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I first saw them with their whole like the post pandemic recovery with the oil and gas lobby. Like I made a video out of that and I even gave them a shout out. And then again, they've had like a couple bangers recently, like Breach Media, for those unaware, like follow that. That is some great independent left media in Canada.
No, they're going to be an absolute game changer.
I think it's really interesting because Naomi Klein is one of the major contributors over at the Breach. But also
I didn't
we
know
have
that.
Yes. And I believe one of the financiers as well. I could be wrong about that, but Naomi Klein, of course, like is featured prominently on my bookshelf. So last week I started late. I started at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because I was at Avi Lewis's nomination meeting for West Vancouver Sunshine Sea to Coast Country. And just phenomenal. I called it on Twitter through the Brave New North page. I called it the Glastonbury of nomination meetings because we had David Suzuki, we had Bill McKibben from 350 Org Incorporated, we had Stephen Lewis, we had Billy Bragg, Jane Fonda, like all of these people.
Everyone was there. It's crazy.
To a Canadian political party, third party nomination meeting, but it was Jane Fonda showed up like it was fucking Bernie Sanders. Emma Thompson showed up and said, "What's a few borders between friends?" Which is a great analogy for the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal, LEAP Manifesto. These are all the same things. LEAP Manifesto. This is 6 years ago now. LEAP Manifesto even showed up in the dictionary. The LEAP Manifesto is not anything. Now we have the Green New Deal. Particularly for friends of the show who know that we've talked about to Peter Julian about the NDP's Green New Deal, which is the LEAP Manifesto. So we have all these, socialists and communists who are like, well, the NDP never adopted the LEAP Manifesto. They're no good. Like, sorry, folks. We're at Green New Deal time. And it might not be in the policy book. It's what we're doing. Like, that's what the party is doing. Is the party is doing Green New Deal. And Avi Lewis is on board. And people might forget, like, grandfather David Lewis was one of the fathers of the CCF. His grandfather, leader of the Ontario Party, led it to official opposition in the 1970s. Like, we're in a really, really interesting place where Avi Lewis is starting to come on board. And so we're bringing these old social democratic, socialist, environmentalist attitudes back into the party. It's very, very exciting. I don't speak for the party. I don't speak for anything. I speak for myself, right? And I'm very excited by it because it feels like, to me, the quote-unquote centrists in the party, or the Blairites, or whatever you want to call them, and the actual socialists are united. I really feel that way. and maybe I'm an optimist.
Maybe we can call them the Mulcarians.
Mulcare bears.
Oh, now that makes them sound cute and cuddly. But yeah, you said like, was that the story that you wanted to share, or there was another news story that you wanted us to?
No, one last one, and because I think it's light, I want to share it.
Okay.
One last story here, because it's the biggest scandal on the left in 100 years.
Okay.
And it is that a book reveals Bernie Sanders' hotel demands. He needs a king-size bed and 60-degree rooms. And I don't know how Bernie is going to recover from this. I'm flabbergasted. I'm shocked. The next thing we're going to hear that he needs running water. But I just want to give a shout out to the hard-hitting journalism of Samuel Chamberlain for the New York Post for really bringing this out in the open. It's extremely important that we know that Bernie's a hypocrite for wanting to sleep indoors. So basically, Senator Bernie Sanders, when he was running for president, he was demanding hotel guests whose requirements would make him even the most pampered celebrity blush. In an excerpt from Battle for the Soul Inside the Democrats' Campaign to Defeat Trump, author Edward Isaac Dover reports that the following Sanders' surprisingly strong 2016 campaign, Democratic Socialist staffers put together a Senator Comfort memo detailing his specifications for each hotel stay and his travels. And it was reported by, of all places, Fox News. According to them, Sanders preferred suites with hot tubs, bathtubs. This is specific. Preferred suites with bathtubs and a king-size bed, which had to have a down comforter or another blanket in the closet. He preferred that the extra blanket be dark blue and made of cotton. Sanders, at 79, required that his room be kept at 60 degrees, even if it meant operating a window in winter or manually overriding the hotel's climate control system. Devere recounts one incident on a trip to California when the hotel worker tried and failed to get the room to the required coolness. So Chloe writes an annoyed Sanders and play, "You don't want me to sleep tonight?" And so, okay, I'm gonna just stop here, because it's so fucking stupid.
Like on a certain level, I like the narrative they're clearly trying to craft is, see, Bernie's a hypocrite. He can't possibly be a leftist. And on the one hand, there's a part of me that's kind of like, come on, Bernie, like, come on. You don't need to have nitty-gritty specifics. But then again, I know that's just, I know, Sandee, I'm just saying that, like, that's just me, but also, like, I'm literally the guy who's done survival training. So long as I have, like, a mat of, like, branches with a sleeping bag, I'm like, I'm great. So I know that I'm not the best person to ask for that. However, I know that, like, sleep numbers and sleep comfort is actually a thing. And if you're going to be on the road all the time, there's certain little things that you want or rely on, whether that's food or, like, your dietary requirements, your sleeping requirements. And, like, this is by, like, quote unquote, shocking revelations. It's so fucking tame. It's not like, like, I demand that there be a golden hot tub in every single room that I stay in. Like, he's not demanding that. He's just saying, like, I want a cool room with blankets, which means, like, he's kind of probably like me in that sense of, like, I like sleeping with a window open, but just, like, a nice blanket or, like, several blankets on top of me to keep me warm, because I can just, like, stay warm under those. So I don't need the room to be warm. I just need the area around me to be warm. So it's kind of like, as you point out, Sean, this is really, at the end of the day, such a non story. Like on the one hand, I am kind of like, okay, Bernie, you don't need all those requirements, but at the same time, it's like, but I'm not him, and like campaigning, and these are all actually like relatively minor things. People ask for extra pillows or blankets or an upgrade to a queen or a king size bed all the time. Like it's not really an issue. Like it's
not an issue.
dumb.
It's not an issue. And you know what? During the campaign, even a year ago, there was another publication that ran exactly the same story, right? They like got their hand on the thing. But if you're running okay, I'll bring it back. Working in rock bands for 10 years or so, traveling, going places, you got a rider. Our rider wasn't the green M&Ms, brown M&M claws like this. It was just sort of like, okay, can we have some towels and maybe a bottle of water and just, like this kind of stuff. You always set this stuff up because the person that's taking care of the admin, 60 degrees does not strike me as outlandish bullshit. No, whatsoever.
It's
Well,
if you have the staff whose purpose it is to do comfort, they were unionized.
also, people should probably keep in mind they weren't so much as demands as room selections.
yes.
Like, you
If
can
you have
have
the
the room with
choice.
the king bed, or you can have the room with the two twins. Why would he need a
65
room with
is
two
called.
beds?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
these are
I think
sometimes
it
these
is
are the
called.
options that you get. It's not like he's making outlandish demands. These are the options you get to choose from.
This is actually good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
want to share this stuff in the
like I said, with
comments.
the whole, people ask for extra blankets or extra pillows, and it's not seen as like, oh yeah, sure. Like it's so silly.
Like he was, yeah. It's just like, oh, here's the list of rooms you can choose from. Which one would you like? How dare you choose as opposed to it having been chosen for you?
Again,
Planted right-wing bullshit story. Yes, you're absolutely right. Comment.
Yeah.
This is a planted bullshit right-wing story. It's the same thing. Like, oh, Bernie Sanders has many homes, or like, oh my God, he owns 3 different winter coats. Like any of that kind of shit. It's the same kind of thing. Like, it's the same thing when people try to come after people and be like, if they're even remotely interested in any sort of redistributive politics, like, oh, but you have 2 cars.
Do you remember when people tried to attack Jagmeet Singh on him being fashionable and how that's like, no, see, he's not working class because he's spending money making himself look nice, and like
Jagmeet Singh not working class, by the way. Like, like we don't. Are we there? Like, are we okay with saying this? He's not a working class dude.
That look, I know, but I'm saying that like
Right.
the point that they were trying to attack him on was like,
Yeah.
see, he's fashionable, he can't represent working class interests, and it's like, that's so nonsense.
It is nonsense. Like I'm on that, like, like, hold up with the Rolexes, dude. Like, come on. Like, I am on team no Rolex. Don't get me wrong.
I'm
But-
on team nationalize the diamond industry and actually compensate the natives for the land that we're extracting them from.
I'm on team. I don't care about diamonds.
Yeah, I think diamonds are stupid.
Now that
And,
we can actually
yes, but if we can-
manufacture them, we can actually make them.
No, I agree, but in terms of if we're still going to have this system where people decide to arbitrarily place value on it, and we're going to take that value from indigenous land, like nationalize De Beers or whatever, and give the money back to the natives so they can actually have nice communities in the north. Like, that's my position.
the only thing is that my only difference is from now I would say absolutely not. But if you were going to be talking about retroactive, now we're talking.
I'm getting an
A
echo. I don't know what's
retroactive.
going
Yeah,
on.
it's I think it might be the software starting to tell us that we need to go home.
I'm
I am
already
home.
home.
Yeah. We're home.
Jinx, Sandy, you owe me a maple syrup.
How would you like that served?
On pancakes, cooked fresh tomorrow because it's a Sunday.
Not the exciting answer I was hoping for.
Sorry, I'm boring. What can I say?
With that, I think we've hit a lot of things. A couple of things I didn't hit on tonight. I wanted to say free Palestine. I wanted to say Black Lives Matter. I wanted to say that reparations for Indigenous people are necessary. There's a lot of shit going on in this country, and I hope that everyone pays attention to alternative media sources because the CBC is not your friend. Check out Left of the Box on YouTube. Check out Bothered Boy. Check out Left Turn Canada. We will have our brother Andy Borkowski on again some other time. With that, I want to say thank you so much for paying attention to our little show, Brave New North. We're on Twitter at Brave New North. Sometimes I do some things at Substack. Check it out. Otherwise, thanks everyone for tuning in. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're going to leave this chat up for at least 2 days, and I want to make it private and throw it up on Substack for money. And
There you go.
thank you so much, Sandee and Bothered Boy. I'm going to turn the live chat on, and we can do a little debrief here before we go.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Night.